welcome back. Obviously, yesterday was the first kind of stream we had of content from GW for actual kind of how the game plays, so that was kind of interesting. Again, obviously your kind of opinions and mileage may vary depending on what you were expecting. GW will always control what people can hear from not allowing the players to speak, because they may go off script, they may react, and they kind of want to very much keep it in a kind of certain way. So that is why I don't think we'll ever hear the players unless it's a kind of pre-scripted recording, like the ones you get at Warhammer Plus for their battle reports. So from kind of that point of view of hearing the tactical side of things for the round 3 game, which was the kind of competitive one but with Liam VSL and Richard Siegler, not kind of the same feel as something like Wargames Live, because you don't get to hear the players' kind of interactions, which is annoying from kind of a tactical point of view. But what it did give us is a whole host of information around a whole load of different things about the new edition, which they kept saying throughout, it's imminent. So I think we can kind of expect by the Sunday maybe there might be the pre-order go live for the Armageddon box, to kind of track with the 20th of June release date that they kind of has been touted and kind of suggested by multiple different people. So I've kind of organised this into kind of several sections based on what there was. I've just taken all of the information and put it into one overall piece. So we have the day sheets. First of all, we have the Gretchen was the one that was shared, and I think the main takeaway was the fact that they still get to do their 4-up for a CP, and that was about it really. Same sort of profile, so nothing new and interesting unless you're an Orc player and you like to be able to roll for your CP. CP generally functions in the same way as 10th edition. There's no change to that. It's not like 9th to 10th where you didn't get your detachment ones and it all changed completely. We then had the Captain with Relic Shield, which I don't think we've seen before either. So very standard kind of profile. This is the one from the box, so whether there'll be more options for weapons, we don't know. But he has a bolt pistol, which has the close quarters keyword, mastercrafted power weapon, and then he still has his ability to reduce the cost by 1 CP. But interestingly, this is once per battle per army. So obviously anything else with a similar thing or another captain can't do it, the same as before. I'm going to assume that you can't, it doesn't restrict you from other characters that reduce it, like say Gilliman, but I don't know. We then have his finest hour, which is, Super Saiyan, go kill stuff. And then the Relic Shield still gives a +1 wound and is already added to his profile. So nothing really new, but that is what the only other data sheet that we were shown that wasn't something we'd already seen. We were then shown these, which are nice. These are some of the cards that show you how the kind of interactions for the missions are set up. So the priority assets and reconnaissance ones, like if you're running reconnaissance, you are doing this, and then you have the different missions, reconnaissance sweep, triangulator, surveil the foe, gather intel, and search and scour. And then similarly for kind of the other ones, there are the different missions. So that was interesting to see, at least kind of the names of the missions. They didn't showcase all of the different missions, which would have been great, and then we could all start playing. But we at least kind of know some of the names and kind of how they interact throughout. And obviously, as you can see, each one has 5 possible, with the mirror included as one of the possible. So if you are always playing as your force disposition priority assets, you're only ever going to have to learn 5 different missions you play against, not all 25. If you are someone that faction hops and disposition hops, you're going to have to know a lot more about what each of the missions do that you could be playing as and against. So during kind of the stream itself, we found out a little bit more about some of the detachments. So Ceramite Sentinels, one of the newer ones for Space Marines, is confirmed as being a 3-point detachment points. Dread Mob is 2 detachment points, so you can kind of add in another one. In terms of list building as well, otherwise I'll probably forget to say it later, when you are building your list, the characters that units are attached to is decided in that step, so you can't get to the battlefield and go, oh, I'm going to leave all my characters separate because I'm playing against a Horde army and I need a bit more kind of units to kind of match them for playing the game. That is taken away now, so some of the nuance at the beginning of the game, I quite like doing that, suddenly deciding actually this guy's going to go solo and need something that can hold down objectives. Kind of that's taken away, but it at least means that you aren't guessing as an opponent in that way, I guess. On the counter side, you kind of can look at a unit and know, I know what it does, so helps in that way. Carrion was a 2-point detachment as well. It's a take and hold one. They get and then also Advanced Acquisition Cadre, which was a 1 detachment point 1, was a reconnaissance force disposition. So it kind of seemed that, again, much like a lot of ones, there was negation emitters mentioned for the Advanced Acquisition Cadre. Seems to drop detection range on stealth suits, so they stay hidden until 9 inches away. It also has a strat for doing sticky. Sticky now is, instead of us all kind of colloquially calling it sticky, now has an official name which is just secured. So you'll probably get confused and everyone will revert to sticky, but technically it's called secured. Then you had the Death Guard ones, where Champions of Contagion is 2 detachment points, it's taken hold, and then Paragons of Putrescence is priority assets. It does appear that it does seem interesting that you can kind of choose which one you're doing, which is a bit odd. I wasn't quite sure, I'd have to go back and watch. But you have to have chosen what your army does in terms of the disposition. If you have multiple at list creation, I believe, I'll have to check that. Then we had the Skitarii Hunter Cohort, which was 2 detachment points for priority assets, and then Lord of the Forge, which is one that hasn't actually been showcased yet on Warhammer Community, is reconnaissance. The ability called Lords of the Forge gives the 2 kind of named characters, Call and Gould, a 5-up Feel No Pain, which is really solid and definitely throughout the game kept Call alive a lot longer, aside from Richard Siegler's insane amount of saves that he made throughout the game. So in terms of, then we have the missions and secondaries. So we got to see a kind of few more different missions. So we had in the Orc and Blood Angel game, we had Unstoppable Force as a primary mission, and this is a Purge the Foe, and then the green is Taken Hold. So any battle round, you can score 3 points for destroying an enemy, and even if you destroy 10, you still only get 3 points, so it's not ultimate no prisoners. And then the end of your command phase, or the end of your turn in the 5th round, which is interesting because there's a bit of it felt like that was going to be, for some of them, it was always going to be varied, but this one is fixed on, oh no, sorry, it is end of, God blimey, everyone is end of turn now, which is great. It means that you're not kind of, there's not necessarily that swing. I don't know whether it will flip it back to first player being able to push, threaten and stop the opponent a bit more, because they can guarantee theirs now, as opposed to having to work out from turn 4 if they were going to get any primary in turn 5. And then end of turn, you get 3 victory points for basically doing Storm Hostile and taking objectives that weren't at the start. A lot of things now seem to exclude your home objective. The objectives are broken into kind of 4 different names. You have your home objective, and then the opponent has their home objective. You then have the central objective, which is the one in the middle, and then you have the expansion objectives, which is the ones that aren't in your deployment zone and are off the other corner generally. They've now included the term that people use anyway, which is good. And then at the end of the battle, you get an extra 5 points for just holding an objective. So if you manage to hold on to an objective, which does allow it to be your home. Oh no, sorry, central objective. So holding the middle at the end of the game, even if you went first. So that one obviously gets easier if you are going second. So I don't know if that's a balancing one to help with that. But very straightforward set of primary missions: kill stuff and stand on stuff. So quite a good one. We then have the other side, immovable object. So end of your turn, you control one or more central objectives, score 3 points. Any point in the game. So you can actually get primary in the first turn now, which is huge. So having that very cheap skirmishing unit to throw forward, or a infiltrate unit and just score 3 points is really useful. And then the rest of the kind of main part of the game, at the end of your command phase, in the second, fourth, you get 5 points for controlling objectives that are not your home. And then you, at the end of your turn in the 5th battle round, you score 5 for each objective you control, not including your home. So your home is kind of meaningless in this one. We then had one of the other ones, the Vanguard Operation and Search and Scour. So, end of your turn, you perform Vanguard Operation. I haven't got that ability thing, so it's an action. I don't think I copied that. I think I've lost it somehow. But you basically had different objectives, I think, that you had to kind of put out and control. But yeah, so again we have a mini Purge the Foe as well, and then you have, from the second battle round onwards, you kind of control one or more objectives excluding home for 4 points, so you don't get multiple. And then you control your opponent's home at the end of the battle, you get 10. So going second, there's a chance you can get that, which is huge. There is a lot of missions that it looks like you're going to need units to perform actions, which is going to possibly diversify how people build their armies, or they're just going to table their opponent and worry about points later. And then Search and Scour. At the end of your turn, you control one or more central objectives. There's a lot of kind of push for doing things in the centre, trying to build that interactivity, I think, which is 3 victory points. And then one or more enemy units started the turn within a terrain area is destroyed for 2. So that one, compared to the Vanguard Operation, is harder because it relies on them having a unit within a terrain area that you can destroy, whereas the other one is just kill for the thing. So there's a bit of distribution kind of on points skew there, but for this one you have to have done an action, whereas this one you just stand, so maybe that's why. For each objective you control from the second round battle round onwards, you get 4 victory points, so you can very easily rack points up for primary, we saw, and secondary throughout the game very suddenly. With a lot of these, there was massive swings in scores in games, from people being 20 behind to them being tied or above. And then finally, at the end of the battle, no enemy units are wholly within your territory. Again, table the opponent, very easy, or just push them back. So I think this one is easier to do if you go first, than, you know, controlling your opponent's home objective at the end of the game, unless you are, you know, dropping a 30 wound knight on it at the end of round 5. It's your opponent might be able to get rid of, and controlling it as well. So here we go. For this one I do have the actual action. So we had Extract Relic. Friendly unit performed a sensor sweep this turn, which the how-to is always on the back, which is useful. And then you get 4 points for that. I'll go through the action in a second. One or more enemy units that started within range of an objective are destroyed, 3 victory points. Again, there's quite a lot of repetition with different things that kind of do. Only one of your opponent's operation markers is on the battlefield if one or more units are within the same terrain area as that operation marker and no enemy units are within that terrain area. Yeah. So you get 4 victory points for doing this one. And that will make sense in a minute once we read through what that does, or how to do that, sorry. So then you have the end of your command phase, or end of your turn. If it's the 5th battle, you control one or more objectives, not your home, as 4 victory points. And then at the end, only one of your opponent's operation markers is on the battlefield. If one or more of your units within the same terrain area as that operation marker and no enemy units, you get another 5 victory points. So there's quite a lot around this operation marker. So for the locate and deny half, this is where the operation markers come from. So you select 5 terrain areas not within your deployment zone. For each one, place one of your operation markers within it. If you cannot, do so for each terrain area that is not within your deployment zone. So when it says not within your deployment zone, obviously is outside, so you cannot put one on your home. So generally there are 4 objectives, and then you choose another terrain piece. There are a few missions that will have 6 terrain areas that are objectives, but on the whole a lot. All the ones showcased were 5. So in any battle round at the end of your turn, you get 4 points if one or more enemy units that started the turn within range of one or more objectives are destroyed. Yep, that's pretty solid for 4 victory points if they're trying to hold them. And then only one of your operation markers is on the battlefield if one or more of your units are within the same terrain area and no enemy units. It's basically the flip of the opponents. You get 4 victory points. And then you are controlling one or more objectives from the second battle round onwards. You get 4 points, not including home. And then at the end of the battle, only one of your operation markers is on the battlefield. If one or more of your units are within the same terrain area as that one and no enemy units, you get another 5. So the action that the yellowy one can do, my biggest challenge is going to be remembering which force disposition links to what. I don't know why they couldn't put the name on them. It would have made life easier, particularly at this point. But one friendly unit within range of one central objective, use limit once per turn. End of your turn, if your unit controls that objective, your unit performs a sensor sweep and you remove an operation marker from the battlefield. You cannot start this action if there is only one operation marker on the battlefield. So you can get rid of several. So useful because it does limit down for the locate and deny side how many points they can score, how easily. And then we go on to secondaries. They showed quite a fair amount of secondaries, honestly, which was good. So we now know most of them. There's one that they shared or spoke through, sorry, but then didn't actually showcase the card. So I will explain that one shortly. I was just trying to. No, apparently I can't. Never mind. Yeah, so I apologise if anyone actually talks in the chat or anything like that. I don't actually have visibility on it, but hey ho. So, plunder is a new action. If you get the cleanse one, or it's active, you can draw a new secondary card and put this back into the deck. Plunder, your shooting phase. One unit within a terrain that is not within your territory. Your territory is your half of the board, effectively. So the other half is the opponent's. You can do it once. It completes immediately. You plunder that area terrain. you get 5 points, which is good. Doesn't have any impact on the terrain. You've just stolen all their gold. You then had forward position shown, which was if it's the first battle round, so this kind of thing still exists, which is nice. You can draw a new card and shuffle this one back in. You control your opponent's home objective and or each expansion objective. So either you control the 2 expansions or your opponent's home or both, and you get 5 points. So that one's quite nice. If you get that and you've got some infiltrates and whatnot, job done. Assassinate is similar but different. So for each enemy character model destroyed this turn, you get 3 points if you're doing it as a fixed mission. For each of those models with a wound of 4 or more, you get 1 plus 1. And that is cumulative as well. So that's pretty good. So if you kill 2, you get an extra 2 points, etc. Not if you kill a 30 wound character, you get 30 points on assassinate for fixed. I don't think. And then 1 or more enemy characters is the tactical version, which we're used to. You get 5 points. If they're all dead, you still get 5 points. So that otherwise is the same. The change is the wound value. We then had Centre Ground, which is basically area denial. They've just renamed it to kind of point out the fact that it is on the centre objective. Unit within 3, no units within 3, you get 3 victory points. And then if you are within 3 yourself, not battle shocked and not an aircraft, and no enemy is within 6 of the centre of the battlefield, you get 5. So exactly the same as before. We then had Display of Might, which there are more friendly units than enemy units wholly within no man's land. You get 2 points. And then at the end of your opponent's turn, so you can keep hold of this through your turn and then score it at the end of theirs, there are more friendly units than enemy units within no man's land and wholly within. So it's a way to kind of get more points is when you kind of trigger it. So that's quite cool. If you think you can outlast them in no man's land for a turn, you can get 3 more points. And then if not, you might discard it or keep it and try again and just score the 2 victory point one. So engage on all fronts. You have a this is now changed where you don't have it in 2 quarters, it's only 3 or 4. There is also a fixed and a tactical variant. It's still, you can't be within 6 of the centre, and you do have to be wholly within. It doesn't allow aircraft or battle shock to do it. I think this is quite risky as a fixed one, considering how your army can be battle shocked for basically the whole game if you're unlucky. But you have a presence in 3 quarters. You get 2 or 3, and then if you're in all 4 quarters, you get 4 or 5. So yeah, that's quite good on the tactical side. But again, depends on how many units you have and how much you want to commit to different portions of the board. We then had outflank. So one or more friendly units are within 6 inches of 1 or more battlefield edges and not within your territory, your half of the board. I can't remember what this used to be called, but it was one of the older missions. And then you can do 2 or more friendly units are within 6 inches of opposite battlefield's edges, and 1 or more of those units is not within your territory. Opposite battlefield edges are those parallel to each other, so either both long or both short, and then you get 5 points. No prisoners, identical to before. For each enemy unit destroyed, you get 2 points. No change on that one, up to 5. Burden of Trust, so if you, when drawn or start your turn for each objective, you can select 1 friendly unit on the battlefield to guard that until the start of your next turn. While that unit is within range, that objective is guarded by your army. For each objective guarded, you get 2 points, so it's up to 5 victory points. It's the same as the mission used to be from the previous pack in 10th, but now it is as a secondary. But it's one of those ones that you have to wait until your next turn to actually succeed. And then secure no man's land is exactly the same. They have to be in no man's land, and you can't be controlling your home, which should never be in no man's land. But they've obviously decided to clarify it just in case and future-proof, I guess. So there was one other one just before we kind of look at those that they shared. It was called Beacon. You pick a unit on the battlefield or in a transport to be your beacon unit. At the end of your opponent's next turn or end of battle, you score 3 points if your beacon unit is on the battlefield and not within your deployment zone, or 5 if it's on the battlefield and not in your territory, so basically in the opponent's half. Yeah, it's alright. There's one that reminds me of, but I can't remember the name of it. They did talk about it. One other thing I've just kind of remembered, in terms of data sheets, the Weird Boy and Librarian have been confirmed as leaders, not support characters, so that's quite good. Psychic and Cleave have been kind of showcased, so I'm not going to go through ones that we already know the rules. I've just kind of pulled them in here. But Cleave is blast for combat, and Psychic is you ignore modifiers, which is good. And obviously Psychic still triggers Psychic stuff. Fire, Overwatch and Explosives, similarly we've kind of seen those, but they were used fairly frequently. One of the big things that with Overwatch, all of the kind of sustains and lethal still trigger. It's only not rerolling hits, so units with sustained and lethal and other rules that trigger off 6s are still pretty solid. Then again, none of the strats, the core ones, were new, but we did get to see these, so that was kind of cool in the use. Heroic, they made a very big deal about it in each game. I think it is going to be circumstantially very dangerous, and kind of you might get unlucky if you kind of fail your charge, left in the open, and opponent just kind of takes your unit out, and maybe scores a secondary off of that, retains control for 2 CP, which is obviously going to be quite expensive. But it's going to be very frustrating when you kind of give Heroic Intervention a go and then you can't CP reroll. You can only use 1 strat on a unit, so it does make quite a big difference. And then if you commit 2 CP and you roll a double 1, oh, happy days. But yeah, it is a risk for an opponent to go and kind of challenge a unit to take an objective, because now that unit, like say Deathwing Knights, can just charge you. I mean, in Wrath they can anyway, but it's always a risk. It's a debate. One day opponent might decide to heroically intervene Mortarion 12 inches and make it, and you're going to be sad. Benefit of cover, that rule is still the same. One of the other things that we do know is that rapid ingress is unchanged, and it's going to still be the same kind of way of it working for 1 CP. The only difference is obviously it's 8 inches rather than 9. Benefit of cover, kind of it goes through. Obviously the big difference is it's -1 ballistic skill, not AP now. And yeah, so same example as we've seen. Because the Rhino is partially obscured, it's getting -1 ballistic skill. Because the unit is within the terrain feature, it gets the benefit of cover, but Unit B doesn't, because not all of the models are in the terrain feature or obscured. So if they were kind of hidden by another piece, like if they were over on the other side, then they would have the benefit of cover because you wouldn't be able to see them. But yeah, that's the case for that one. Making a charge move, the same sort of thing. They kind of went through, so it is to the base, not to engagement range anymore. So if you are 7 inches away base to base, that's how you have to go. If you're 7.1, you need an 8. Because it's measured from the base to the base, which is important with a rule that will come up kind of towards the end of this. Overrun, they kind of showed a new variation of the image. So the blue player has no fights first unit, so the red player selects their next unit. They select another fight first unit, one that charged. This unit is unengaged, but was engaged with the transport at the start. So they used the same wording, even though there's not a transport there, but I'm assuming there was something that kind of got out because oh no, this is still the Berserkers one. They've just cut it down and not got the image. But yeah, I thought it was orcs when I first put it in. But yeah, so it kind of is another one that's quite a difference now, and people have to be quite careful of how they position units. Coherency is quite a big one. So this is going to impact a lot of units, particularly ones like the 20 grots with the character that people ran. It's going to impact things like Necron warriors stringing out across the entire freaking board. All models need to be within 2 inches of another model, and then every model has to be within 9 inches of every other model in the unit. Within, not wholly within. So it's slightly further for bigger model units as an extreme. So as you can see here, the model here could actually be another almost half an inch this way. This model, because it's 2 inches, couldn't, but you could string things out a little bit further. Sorry, for this model is 1.5 inches. You could go a little bit further, still be within 9 of this one, as they've done their nice dotted circle. This one, because it's 2 and 2 here, you would be able to shuffle this one a little bit further this way, shuffle this one a little bit further this way, and then string that to right of the edge of the base. So there is some maximising of coherency you can do to kind of get a bit further. Things like Terminators with a 40mm base is going to be able to get a little bit further outside that 9-inch circle than a 32mm base by 8mm, but it does add that little bit extra, so it'll be interesting to see how and if that impacts anything. We then had solid, how buildings function. Basically, any part of a building in a dense terrain feature, basically ruins, that has the solid rule. So basically you cannot draw a line of sight through, even if there happens to be a window, if it is 3 inches or less from ground level. Basically first floor windows are closed, which is how kind of people play it, but they have now actually written it into the rules for the first time, so there is that clarity and consistency. Means TOs don't have to put it in their pack or remind people. Hopefully people will just be used to the rule, and it won't catch people out if they've played at different events that don't do it, or the terrain functions slightly differently. So it does at least kind of give that support for people. We then had how the fight phase resolves. So similar but different. So you resolve all fight first combats first, so that's either charging units or units that have the fight first ability. You start with the player whose turn it is, which is the opposite to 10th edition. You then alternate. Then if there are no fight first units that are eligible to fight, you move to the resolve remaining combats. So with the resolve remaining combats, start with the player who just moved this sequence onto this step. So if you it goes back and forth as opposed to jumping to another player, as it sometimes potentially did. So if if I fought with my fight first unit, then my opponent did, who turn it isn't, and then I didn't have another fight first, I would still get to fight. So it kind of just gives a bit more back and forth and consistency, which is nice, but different, I guess. Kind of people are just going to have to remember and get their head around it. And then you back and forth until the end of all the combats. So, big change. Pivot doesn't exist as a rule in the core rules that they've shown. Whether it is in a tournament companion or whatever, it might change, it might kind of update later, but as of right now, there is no paying for pivot for turning. The big thing for people need to note is that you measure the charge before you move, so you can't go, oh, it's an 8-inch charge, and then be able to move further and get into a different charge that was 10 inches away because of spinning around like a crazy person. It just is all about kind of making move it's more straightforward. You always measure from the same point on the model, it would appear, is what they're kind of trying to indicate, but that is interesting. I don't know if it makes a difference too much. It might do on things like raiders and things like that, where they're weird shape, so much longer than wide. But they also kind of point out that models without base are rotated around the centre. So there are a few models, maybe Wave Serpents and Falcons, that might also benefit slightly, just because their base is off kilter to the rest of the model. It's not central. We'll see how much of an impact it has. There was a lot of people in the comments on the stream panicking about the change. We then have this long and complicated thing. So they've spoken about that fast rolling can make things quicker. So there was a graphic that was shared that it's quite confusing. People have found it. It's okay. It's not that bad. So you basically create groups and declare order. So the target unit's controlling player divides it into groups. So in this case we have Saint Celestine, the Gemini Superior and the Seraphim. So that's the 3 groups they've created. They then declare the allocation order, choosing the Gemini Superior first, hoping their better save and invuln characteristic will keep them alive. The Seraphim must be chosen second, and then because Celestine is a character, she has to be chosen last. You can't, take it on the character. You can't order it that way. You then resolve the attacks. Dice. So the heavy bolters shoot and wound 5 times. You then roll 5 saves. The attacks are resolved one at a time from lowest save to highest. So this is one where you might be picking units that have models that have a 2-up save, and then the other models in the unit have a 3-up save. So the 2 results of 1 are allocated first to the current allocation group. The Gemini Superior, they both inflict damage and are both of them are destroyed. So sad times you roll double 1 rather than double 2. Or 3, whatever their base save is. And then we have the result of 3 is now allocated to the Seraphim, who have now become the current allocation group. When modified by the weapon's AP, it still also destroys 1. And then the remaining attacks fail, so no further damage. But it does mean that if, say, there was 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 dice, and you did that same order, you would do all of the lowest ones. It might kill the whole unit, and then we're only left with 5s and 6s. Celestine would then take no damage because they're the highest dice. So it does allow for that kind of allocation. It is going to be something you have to very carefully kind of discuss with your opponent about the allocation groups, and make sure it's kind of clear, so that there's no confusion about the order and things like that. I think people will often forget at the beginning of the edition. It's again something new for people to get used to. So that's kind of the last kind of graphics that they showed about different rules. There's a few other things that kind of going to go through that I don't have a graphic visual for because they didn't give us one. I will in the future create how-to guides with physical demonstrations for every single different kind of rule that requires one in the core rulebook, and just to kind of help people with getting their head around the new and the change and the different. So we have it confirmed that everything gets towering or old towering by just stepping in to terrain pieces and gaining line of sight, which makes long range weapons quite terrifying because they don't have to be wholly within. Even those 5x2 inch plates, they just touch and then they can shoot through. So basically what knights can do now, and that is quite powerful for vehicles and things like that. Does mean they can then be shot back as well, so they are then exposed to everything, but they will probably have cover. So it's interesting how much of an impact that's going to have. Obviously actual towering on knights is now the +1 ballistic skill within 12, which generally I think if you're within 12 you're probably dead anyway against a lot of the knights. Scout and Infiltrate, the units that have both, say Striking Scorpions, it was shown in the third game, you don't get to do both. You can choose either to Scout or to Infiltrate. You can now do a new thing with Scouts, which is you hold them off the board and then you deploy them in your deployment zone at the start of the first turn. Like before movement and everything else. So it does allow you to kind of see where everything is positioned and then kind of put them where they're most needed. So that's quite a big change. It does significantly impact units like Striking Scorpions and other units that would infiltrate, scout forward and jail you turn 1. I think Pathfinders or some of the Tau units maybe. As I've said, Sticky is now officially secured. One of the other ones, and if you looked at some of the data sheets, the leaders still get their ability if the unit dies. They've changed the wording to this unit has sustained 1 or things like that, rather than whilst leading, so that's quite nice. Lycus and Jane Czar won't suddenly just be stuck in the open and not able to charge if the Banshees die in Overwatch, or the Spiders do, which is always sad. Big one is battle shocked units are OC dash, not OC 0, so you can't, like Guard do, and give them +1 OC to still control an objective. So that is a huge change. Still can't use strats either when they're battle shocked, but the OC one I think is quite big because there was a lot of people that kind of used get around abilities to still control objectives. Indirect fire hits on 6s, huzzah. Really great change. I hate indirect. It's so swingy half the time. It's either oppressive or pointless. This at least kind of gives it that. And then it has a nice little bit where it hits on 4s if you have a unit spotting the enemy. It's not an action or anything, it's just physically seeing them. Also indirect can always target hidden opponents, which I think is the kind of trade-off for them hitting on 6s. But that is interesting that it allows for kind of that to get around, so to kind of, if you can't interact with a hidden unit, is an interesting one. Consolidations, it was not really specified, it's a bit unclear. You don't have to go towards the nearest objective, just on to an objective, so you kind of get a choice. Units can have a leader and support attached, but only one of each type. So you can't have 2 support and 2 leaders. They kind of implied that base-to-base second rank fighting is gone, but kind of most of that's gotten around by the fact that you've got a 2-inch engagement range, which makes engagement range huge. One of the big things with that was if you are falling back from a unit, you have to be able to get outside of a 2-inch engagement range, which may make slower units struggle somewhat with falling back. So Terminators and other things, but generally Terminators stay in the fight unless it's something they really don't want to fight, like Be'lakor or something. Hazardous is 1 mortal wound on 1s and 2s for infantry, still 3s on characters, vehicles and monsters. So it's slightly more lethal, but the same on same amount of damage on characters, vehicles and monsters. Doesn't instantly kill the infantry unless you're Drakari and Eldar and half the armies I play. Units are also joined together in list building, as I said earlier, so they don't become 2 different units when the bodyguard dies. So if that unit is battle shocked, say your Grey Hunters joined to a Wolf Priest are battle shocked, the Grey Hunters die, the Wolf Priest still has to test for battle shock. So that's quite a big change. And then we have the slightly strange disembarking. So when a transport is destroyed, they have to disembark set up as close to the hull as possible. You take hazardous on 1s and 2s. If you are destroyed as a transport while in close combat, you can disembark directly into combat. Deadly Demise is also kind of shown to be resolved after. So I didn't see any example of it, but they were talking about how Deadly Demise kind of works, and you will disembark your unit and then roll for Deadly Demise. So you could lose half the squad because you rolled 1s and 2s, and then it blows up, and then you kill the rest of the unit because you rolled really well on that dice. that you wanted to roll poorly on. So that's quite interesting and kind of quite a big risk for some units on using transports. There's a few units that kind of people questioned that wasn't clarified, like 20 Orc Boys getting out of a battle wagon, having to be in base contact, and then technically being over 9-inch coherency. So that will be interesting how that functions. I think that is based on kind of what I've got. Everything that I can think of. There was Insane Bravery is still once per game. You can't use it if you're going into a new turn battle shocked. So if your unit is battle shocked, they'll have to unbattle shock before being Insane Bravery. So it's only a way to bypass having to do the test, not unbattle shocking. And yeah, that kind of is the crux of all the rules they shared within that. I'm kind of really looking forward to getting to play some games of 11th now, just to kind of get my head around it. Really want to know like points values, how they're changing, and kind of any other nuances. I am at Warhammer Birmingham Open over the next week, well, next weekend, and we'll have a whole host. I've literally got about 100 of them, of kind of like 3-inch widgets and some stickers. If people want, come and grab, come and say hello. We'll hand them out freely and kind of have a chat, unless of course I'm in the middle of a particularly complex game. They will be out on the side. You can always grab the sticker and thing. And yeah, if you enjoy the content, or if you would like to give any feedback, first of all, like, share and subscribe, and then comment and let me know any changes, what I can do different, what can make it useful content for you. And yeah, I will be back later once I've digested the probably released Eldar information, and